Well, hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. One country readily comes to mind when insecurity, corruption, communal clashes and slow economic growth are mentioned in just one paragraph. It has the potential of becoming the most successful country in Africa and by way of influence change the dynamics of democracy and politics on the continent. Nigeria is facing yet another test in the build-up to what promises to be a contentious election year. 2019 is just around the corner and the twists and turns have already begun, while the unfolding political drama is unsettling a lot of Nigerians. So with all the chaos in the polity, how can Nigerians make sense of the all too familiar struggle for power? Well, my name is Alhaji Ahmed. We're here to set the agenda and further the discussion. Live from our studio in Bajabura Hills, this is On the Spot. Right, let's get to the heart of the matter. Dot the I's and cross the T's. On the spot today is Adamu Modibbo. He's a politician, a businessman, a lawyer, a financial expert, a political analyst, and a public commentator. And he's on the program. A pleasure to have you join us on the program. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. I mean, obviously, we're taking a look at where Nigeria is, how we are, where we are, how we got to where we are today, and where we possibly can be in the near future. And I've spoken to a lot of people on this particular platform, and everybody seems to have a different explanation as to why things are the way they are. We'd love to get your take with regards to what you think is responsible for this, array of problems that we have to deal with. Insecurity, the economy, how politics is turning into, very violent arena where the killings are, are obviously waiting to happen, and all of this, dysfunction put in one. What is your take on this?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy to come back again. But Abdullah, let me tell you, it's very sad what is going on in our country, particularly in our own region, in northern Nigeria, and also particularly in Adamawa State. We have been having our own fair share of the crisis in the Numan Federation area and so on. Simply put, I just feel that the leadership has moved their eyes off the ball,
okay,
so to speak, if you like. In the fundamental responsibility or objective of any government, any responsible government, is the protection of lives and property. This is number one objective why we should have a government, and that is the number one responsibility of any government. Protect life, protect property. One can argue that every election cycle in Africa, you have crises like this. But be that as it may, ours is one too many. In every civilized society, what is happening in Nigeria is not something that any responsible government can live with. Look at the crisis we're having in Zamfara State. And you see, the problem is you hardly can even find an appropriate color to describe what is going on. There is no...
It's somehow confusing.
Yeah, there's no appropriate description or definition or delineation of what is happening. In Zamfara, Hausa are killing Hausa, Fulani are killing Fulani for no reason. They are not fighting over land, they are not fighting over anything, but nobody knows what it is. It's just happening. Go to Biningwari in Kaduna State. People, cattle rustlers, are destabilizing the place by stealing animals belonging to other people, and they react, and then you shed blood. Come to the plateau. Look at what is happening in
just recently.
Go to Benue, Nasarawa, Taraba. We are all living witnesses of what has happened in Mambila and so on. And come to Adama, Numan Federation area, what is going on. This is just cannot understand what is going on, as it is unspeakable.
As you try to make sense of all of these things,
yes,
what would you say is at the heart of this problem for causing this so much destruction of lives and property that, in fact, actually ushered in this administration that promised to tackle this insecurity?
To me, from the perspective of the ordinary man in the village, the people who are victims, who are the cause, who are causing all these problems, to me, is just frustration of existence. Somebody living in the village, he doesn't have education, he doesn't have health care, he doesn't have a job, he is young, he's 25, 30 years, he doesn't have anywhere to go to solve his problem. And you expect, and therefore with small provocation, he will just burst and take the law into his hands. From the perspective of the government or the leadership, to me, that's why I described it earlier, that they have removed, their eyes are off the ball. Governance is not all about just providing certain basic requirements of infrastructure like roads, like street lights or something like that. You also are required to protect the lives and properties of people. You have to give these people education, you have to give them good health care. So in the absence of all this, government is very busy building roads, putting up street lights, and that is removing their eyes from the serious issues. That is secondary to secondary issues, removing their focus or their attention from primary fundamental issues to secondary issues. If you don't live in peace, of what use is your street light? Of what use is the roads that you are constructing? Of what use the railways that we are doing? You are saying, you are bragging that you have done railways. People must live in peace, in harmony first, before they enjoy all these things. So to me, government is not focusing on the right issues. Leadership is not focusing on the right issues. And unless and until they do that, nobody can come and address all these fundamental problems that we are experiencing in this society. Now,
one person who we're all familiar with that has been championing this, issue of a much better Nigeria under different circumstances, the former Vice President, His Excellency, who has been at the forefront of this argument for restructuring Nigeria. What is your own version of restructuring Nigeria? Or do you see that as a solution to all of this problem?
Even if you restructure Nigeria, depending on what you mean by restructuring, if you break up Nigeria, which some people want, to some people in Nigeria, restructuring means you give them independence, let them be their own country. To some people, restructuring means we go back to region. To some people, restructuring means you take over all the oil resources in the country and give it to their states. So there is no definite definition of what restructuring is.
Have you seen any explanation that appealed to you, that you find interesting?
The explanation or the view of the former Vice President appeals to me, because I took him up on that and I asked him, sir, what do you mean by restructuring? Do you want us to go back to regions? Do you want to merge the states and go back to regions? Do you want us to split Nigeria, or what do you mean by restructuring? And he said, look, Adam, what I mean by restructuring is that there is too much concentration of power, roles and responsibilities in the federal government, and too much resources concentrated in the hands of the federal government. We have to dissipate these responsibilities, share them between the federal and state and local governments, and with concomitant allocation of resources, financial resources, from the center down to the state and the local governments, to enable them to execute these new roles and responsibilities that may be passed to them. And I find it interesting because, for instance, why should the federal government be funding primary education? Primary, not university education. So if there is any resource, financial resources in the hands of the federal government, pass it to the state and the local government, let them take care of that. Establish structures and institutions that can ensure that that responsibility of taking care of primary education is handled properly. I appreciate the challenges that you can say the state government and the local government may not have the capacity to manage those resources to this thing. If there is accountability, if the House of Assembly can hold a governor accountable on the appropriation bill that he has presented and approved by the House of Assembly, every kobo that he spends, the House of Assembly will hold him responsible. Then every kobo that is sent down from the state, from the federal, for the sake of primary education, will be accounted for by the governor. So we can have good people that can come because of that confidence in the system, that can come and say, we are here to give our expertise to be able to develop the primary education system in the country.
Yeah. How do you react to people who say you cannot trust the state governments or state governors with state police, for instance, or with, you know, a much more added financial responsibility, because right now we have certain states that have not paid salaries for close to a year or even more than a year across the country today, and that appears to be a recurrent problem. So a lot of people think that a restructured Nigeria along that particular line cannot be sustained, because you cannot trust the executive governors to deliver.
That's why I said in my statement, if you devolve power, roles and responsibilities to the states and the local governments, accompanied by adequate resources, you have to also build institutions that will hold the governor and the chairman of the local government responsible for whatever amount of money given to him and for whatever amount of project that he is supposed to do. If he does not do it, those institutions, particularly like the House of Assembly, those institutions will hold him responsible. But ultimately also, it is the ordinary voter, the ordinary man that can hold them accountable. If you are voted as a governor and you come, you do not perform, next election round, you will be removed. And if you are removed, if the people vote you out, you will be voted out. You cannot rig the election. Then every governor or every chairman or every president or every body elected will sit up and ensure that he performs according to what the ordinary man wants him to do. And if he does not do so, he will be checkmated by those institutions that were put in place to checkmate the executive.
Now, permit me to bring, you know, the memories of the first Prime Minister of this country, Tafawa Balewa, who said, there is a Nigeria, but there are no Nigerians. I mean, we all see ourselves from our regional perspective, from our ethnic perspectives and things like that. And a lot of people have said that the reason why we're experiencing this social dysfunction is because there was never a time when we saw each other as one nation, as one people. Do you agree that there is a problem of, you know, a crisis of identity about what it means to be Nigerian, so much so that it's evident in the polarization that we have today, where you have agitations from different parts of the country, where in the north we're dealing with Boko Haram insurgency, in the southeast you're talking about the agitations for the independent people of Biafra, and while the, you know, in the southwest there's also a call for an Oduduwa Republic and things like that. This polarization, does it speak to, you know, the identity crisis that we're having as Nigerians?
All these identity crises, the polarization, the division that we're having, is nothing other than the kind of, other than symptom for lack of economic empowerment to people. If people are rich, if people are adequate in their human needs, basic human needs, nobody will remember that you are an Igbo man or you are a Yoruba man or you are a Hausa man. I will give you an example. All these big politicians who are gathered in Abuja, have you ever heard that the National Assembly has broken into a fight because the Senate President is a Hausa man from Kwara, or Fulani man or Yoruba man from Kwara, or the Speaker is a Christian from Bauchi? Nobody has ever heard that. Why? Because the members of the National Assembly, they are adequately taken care of. So if the ordinary man is adequately taken care of, he will never remember that you are not his tribe, that you don't go to the same church, or that you are a Muslim, he's a Christian. Nobody will remember. In those days, these Tafawa Balewa days that you are talking about, and the Sir Ahmadu Bello days, these things were not there because the people who were in power were adequately taken care of. They had morals, they had patriotism, they are patriotic, and so on. So the reason why you are having all these crises is because the ordinary poor man in the village cannot find a job to do. He doesn't earn any income. His children do not go to school. In northern Nigeria today, nearly 80% of our children are out of school, depending on where you are coming from, particularly here in the northeast. Compare that to what is obtained in the South. In the Southwest, for instance, less than 10% of their children are not going to school. Less than 10. Ours is nearly 80. And these are the same people that you are saying they should coexist in the same country. How? It's not possible. Take healthcare. You will be sick. You cannot find any hospital to go to. How many doctors do we have today in Adamawa State? How many functional hospitals do we have? Compared to the 4 to 5 million people that we have that exist in Adamawa State, that live in Adamawa State. How many hospitals do we have?
There's just so many inadequacies.
So many. Go to the specialist hospital, go and find out there. No human being that loves himself and that loves himself and can afford that will take himself to that hospital. To go and do what? Go to the Federal Medical Center. How many machines there do work to take care of sick people? So there is no health care. Go to the villages. The only occupation in the village is the farming. The farm. But somebody came to me yesterday. He's from Michigan. He's telling me that you pay 55,000 naira to hire a tractor belonging to government. You pay 55,000 naira to hire it for only 2 hours. Later they change it to 65,000 naira per day. But then the tractor will come and the operator of the tractor will come and work for 2 hours and he'll go away. Or after working for 1 hour, the tractor will break down. And you have already paid your money to government.
Are you questioning the commitment of the government towards developing the well-being of
as far as
people?
Concerned, Nigerian government, state, local government, and federal are not seriously focusing on what they need to do to bring about development to the ordinary man. What worries the ordinary man is not what worries them. And so long as this continues, you will continue to have this crisis. And I will give you an example. For God's sake, what does it take to arrest anybody who goes to attack any village and kill people? What does it take? We have an army, we have Air Force, we have Navy, we have police, we have SSS, we have civil defense, we have immigration, we have custom, we have all the paramilitary institutions known to mankind. We have them in Nigeria. What does it take? Somebody will go to a village, go and attack them and kill people, like what is going on in the plateau now, on the plateau now. Look at what happened in Bare here recently, about a week ago. What does it take? How many people have you had who are arrested and arraigned for doing that? How many people have you had are arrested and arraigned for armed robbery? How many? How many people who were sentenced to death have been executed? So there is total breakdown of law and order. As far as I'm concerned, it's my opinion, I'm entitled to my opinion. There's total breakdown of law and order in the country. We don't have institutions that are fighting these criminals. Ordinary Boko Haram with Nigerian army. This is our 7th year we are fighting Boko Haram. And up to now it hasn't finished.
A lot of people would argue that we're winning the war.
We have made progress, there is no doubt about it. We have made progress. But where are these small boys of Boko Haram coming from that Nigerian army cannot crush them in 1 or 2 months? We fought Biafra. Nigerian army fought Biafra in 3 years and they have crushed the rebels. Since 1970, we have not heard of anything like that again. But Boko Haram here in only one state. Maybe some parts of Adamawa, some parts of Yobe. 7 years we are fighting them with the whole might of Nigerian military. We cannot defeat them. So there is a need for government to sit down and take a look at how they do things. Anything short of that, we are going to continue like this beyond the 2019 election. Because people are alleging that it's because of election. Boko Haram has been with us for the last 7 years. It's not because of election. Armed robbery has been with us for many years. It's not because of election. These cattle rearers destroying farmlands and killing people, or the natives, the owners of the farmlands retaliating and killing cattle rearers, and so has been with us for a long time. But we have not addressed the issues. And you see, the issue, these problems are also generated structurally. I will give you an example. During the First Republic, There are so many identified and gazetted ranches in this country for taking care of animals like cows and goats and sheep and so on. Most of this, that time our population in Nigeria was 56 million. Nigeria's population in the First Republic was 56. Now our population is 180 million. Human settlements have taken over all these ranches. So where do you want the herdsman to go and rear his cattle? Government has not brought any program to settle him down. So inevitably, whether you like it or not, that herdsman will go into the farmlands of people.
You're inevitably saying that government has allowed certain responsibilities to play itself by chance and not by choice.
Government has shirked in its own responsibilities, as far as I'm concerned. Government has failed in its own responsibilities. The herdsmen, this is their way of life. Regulate them and provide how they can do their cattle rearing.
No, of course, we've seen a lot of contradictory opinions about how best to approach the issue. But whether it's banning open grazing, whether it's ranching, whether it's there's just so many opinions out there about how best to address the issue.
Reactions. They are not, as far as I'm concerned, these are not sustainable policy objectives that can take us to the promised land. These are all rushed reactions. Take the open grazing ban in Taraba and Benue State. We have about 25 million cattle in Nigeria. We have about 80 million goats and sheep in Nigeria. These are owned by Nigerians. And these cattle and these animals is part of our wealth, is part of the GDP. 10% of the GDP, 35% of our GDP is agriculture, and 10% of that is animal husbandry. Where, if you ban open grazing, or if you ban grazing, where do you want these people to take the animals to? Where? In Benue and in Taraba, don't they eat beef? Don't they eat ram? Don't they eat pigs? They do.
A lot of people say the collateral damage is just too much to bear.
No, I agree. It is unacceptable for any herdsman to come and be killing people or destroying farmlands. But banning them is not the solution. The solution is sit down as a government to regulate the way how grazing is done. It's not ban, regulate. You have to find place for them to go and regulate, to go and graze. You have to find different place for farmers to go and farm. I'm not agitating that you should allow herdsmen to go on rampage and be destroying farmlands. No, it's criminal. Any herdsman that does that or kills people is a criminal. Try him and shoot him. I don't have any problem with that. But government has not provided for them the means of livelihood, and they are destroying farmlands. You cannot allow animals to come where you have farms. And you cannot allow somebody who farms to go into area allocated for animals grazing. So let government sit down and come up with articulated, sustainable policies to take care of all this in the long run. 35% of the cattle, the animals like cow, sheep, goat of this country reside in Adama and Taraba. Taraba ban open grazing. Where do you want these cattle to go to? To go back into Cameroon? So that you will deprive them of beef and protein? The impact of doing that is that you are depriving people of beef and protein.
And that could take a big hit on the economy.
On the economy. If people are deprived of protein, how do you want them to live a healthy life? So, to me, if I were them, I would sit down and craft out sustainable policies of grazing and farming to be able to solve the problem on a permanent basis.
Yeah, the federal government is planning to establish about 75 or so ranches across the federation, certain areas particularly. Do you see that as a long-term?
Under the Land Use Act 1978, the federal government doesn't have land. It is the state government that has land.
Well, in collaboration then with the state government.
No, but how can they collaborate? If the federal government, for instance, is ruled by one particular political party and the state is another political party, you think they will cooperate? If the federal government is the way we are polarized now. If the federal government, if the president for now is a Muslim, and the governor in the state is a Christian, you think the Christian will listen to the president to bring about policies that will support herdsmen who are majority Muslims? Or the farmers who are majority Christian? It will not work.
Do you not see a common ground where we can all say, devoid of all the coloration about ethnicity or religion, this is the way forward?
What I expected the federal government to do is to sit down as the father of the nation, call the governors, sit down and dissect the problem, analyze and identify what the problem is, and say, me as the president of the Federal Republic, I insist this is what we must, and I'm the chief security officer of the country. I insist this is what we must do. You, governor, go and tell your survey department to survey the entire land in your state and bring out areas where we can have grazers, grazing, to go and stay there, and areas where we can have farmers. The entire land in every state belongs to the governor. It is the governor who holds the land on behalf of the people. That is why they give certificate of occupancy. All these villagers in the village farming, they don't have certificate because it is the governor who gives certificate. They only have possession of the land. They don't have ownership of the land. It is the governor that owns the land. So if I was president, I would tell the governor, go and bring me, and they will have statistics from the Federal Office of Statistics. They will say, in Adama, for instance, we have about 2 million cows. 2 million cows scientifically can live comfortably in so hectares of land. Let us assume, say, 2 million cows can live on 1 million hectares of land. We say, okay, Governor Adama, go and allocate, go and identify 1 million hectares of land where exclusively it will be for grazing. And then go and also identify 1 million hectares or 2 million hectares that will specifically be allocated to farmers.
That will balance the equation.
That will balance the equation. Allocate to farm, do a census of all your farmers and your grazers. Identify them, allocate this land to them, let them go there and grow their crops. No cow will go there. And then put inspectors, farm inspectors, ranch inspectors, who will be enforcing the regulation and make sure nobody crosses from one side to the other. You solve the problem forever.
Are you proposing a ban on subsistence farming? Because most of the people in the villages are subsistence farmers.
Even in the village, you don't have to have the 1 million hectares for farming in only one place. You can spread it. You can spread it. In every village, you can say, okay, this village, we are going to have 100 hectares for farming. We are going to have 100 hectares for grazing. But let one be in the east, the other one in the west of the village. And you have government official, a regulator who will be there to enforce the exclusion of one from the other. You can enforce it. It's a government. You have resources to do that. You have police, you have army, you have navy, you have air force, you have everything. Let me tell you, I saw something very interesting in the last 2 weeks in India. I was in India. I was driving from New Delhi to a city called Agra, 270 kilometers apart. Both sides of the road were all farms, green, during rainy season, during dry season, green. So I was asking my driver, and there was no single plot that I saw that was not cultivated. No single plot, all the 270 kilometers, both left and right. Everything was cultivated as farms. So I asked the driver, how come you people are growing things during dry season and there's no water? He said, it is a law in India. Everybody who is allocated a plot must have a borehole. Otherwise, government will know. You have to have capacity to do a borehole.
For irrigation.
For irrigation. You have to, and you must grow both during rainy season and dry season. If you are not going to grow during dry season, they will not give you land. You must grow twice a year. I'm not saying everybody has capacity to do borehole here, but government is doing dams for animals across the road. You can see dams, even between here, Jimeta and Yola, around Chochi area. On the left-hand side, when you are going to Yola, there is a dam there. It's for cattle, opposite the abattoir. There is a dam there for cattle to come and drink water. So let government help people by constructing these dams and get water on the ranch side. And then on the farming side, let them also do whatever infrastructural assistance that the government is going to do. It's doable.
All right.
It's not impossible to do.
Okay. We'll just take a moment's breather because this conversation will switch gears, definitely talk about other developing issues, particularly in the build-up to the 2019 election. Now, of course, we'll get the thoughts of the businessman, the politician, and of course, the economist from Adamu Modibbo in just a moment. So join us for part 2 of this conversation coming up next.
My name is Charles Doke. I report for TV Gotel. It is important to have a bureau in Abuja because this is the seat of government. This is where all major decisions are taken by government. It is a big pot where you have everything that makes the big story in news. And we owe it a duty to Nigerians to dish these stories out to them as they come.
We have so many positive African stories to tell, such a rich diversity of culture. You know, we should be telling those positive cultural stories within the continent rather than importing stuff from the UK and, you know, Britain has got talent, or, you know. Traditionally, if it bleeds, it leads. Whenever you want to tell a story, the most compelling story for a non-African to tell is going to be about drought, it's going to be about disease, it's going to be about war. The joyous stories which are to be told out there, it's not to say that, you know, Africa is not without its problems, but we do need to have a sense of balance, and we do need to look at those problems within the context of the culture with which we grew up.
Welcome back to the program. This is On the Spot on TV Gotel. Today we're taking a look at the state of the nation, developments across the country, especially in the build-up to the 2019 election, the violence, the destruction, and all of that structural issues that we're faced with, particularly looking at the fate of Nigeria and Nigerians. Adamu Modibbo is a politician, a businessman, a lawyer, and a public affairs commentator. He's been helping us dissect these issues in separate perspectives. Now let's talk about economic challenges. I remember 2016, a lot of Nigerians will never forget 2016, largely because of one word, which is the recession that we'd had to deal with. A lot of people are still, you know, feeling the pains of it. A lot of people are still grappling with the economic difficulties that Nigeria is still going through. I know the numbers are looking good, especially with regards to the forecast and the projections because of some of the indicators. But a lot of Nigerians still have concerns about whether this is going to be the new norm now, that we have governments who cannot, you know, prevent some of these things from happening, especially now that we're still heavily reliant on oil for our revenue. Where do you see the flaw in all of this?
You see, recession in every economy must happen. Even in the US economy in 2007, 2008.
Are you saying a recession is a good thing?
A recession cannot be a good thing, but it's something that comes from time to time. It has to come, either because of policy mishaps or natural cycles of economic activity. And in Nigeria, we are bound to have recession, whether we like it or not, because we have a monocultural economy. Our economy produces only one product, which is oil. 90% of the total earnings of the federal government, or total earnings of Nigeria, is coming from oil. So anything that happens to the oil market will naturally impact negatively on Nigeria. If oil prices come down sharply, our revenues will come down sharply. You will begin to see devaluation. You will begin to see a loss of jobs. You will begin to see so many things. Hike in interest rate. You will begin to see
inflation and everything.
Inflation and so on, because our inflation is fueled normally by exchange rate because of import dependency of the economy. So unless you diversify your economy, you can never get away from the implication of the impact on oil prices, international oil prices.
What do you say to people who point to the so-called revolution that is taking place in the agriculture sector right now, because it has appreciated considerably from 2017 to 2018 in terms of production and in terms of the government's policy to ban the importation of rice?
It's part of a combination of many issues that will make you diversify. Emphasizing agriculture is important because it creates jobs, it employs many people, and then also it reduces the amount of money you spend in importing food. That amount of money that you spend in importing food is normally transferred to the foreign country where you're importing the food from. For instance, rice. Every day in Nigeria we're spending ₦1 billion to import rice from Thailand. 360 billion naira every year, which is about $1 billion, even more. So what that means is that instead of growing the rice in Nigeria, we take $1 billion out of our foreign earnings from oil to buy rice to bring it into Nigeria. And when you bring it, you eat it. When you eat it, it wastes away. So that 1 billion naira is a loss. It's not generating employment, and it's not generating return on it. So that is why focusing on agriculture is good. We are saving that 1 billion naira if we do not import. And that $1 billion, and that $1 billion, if saved from importation of rice, can be used to build bridges, can be used to do railway, can be used to pay for education, it can be used to pay for security, it can be used to pay for so many things, constructing highways and so on. So that is only one aspect. But the other aspect is also that let's continue to be less dependent on oil. Even though we'll still be extracting oil and selling, but let's be less dependent on it. Otherwise, anything that happens to our exchange rate will impact on our industries. For instance, if you are a manufacturer of textile, we don't do the machines in Nigeria. The cotton may not be grown in Nigeria. The processed cotton that will end up in the material may not be processed in Nigeria. The raw material, all the raw materials may not be found in Nigeria. So if you diversify and begin to use these oil resources to be able to do primary processing of your products here in Nigeria, you save money from importing that raw material from outside. I will give you an example like cocoa. We grow cocoa, but we take it raw to Switzerland and sell it to Nestle.
The value chain is non-existent.
We have to develop our value chains. We have to create them and develop them so that at the end of the day, we'll wake up one day and find out that we're earning $30 billion every year from oil, but we don't need more than $5 or $10 billion out of it. The remaining one will go into a foreign reserve to increase the strength of our economy and so on.
What do you make of our debt profile? Because a lot of people, have concerns about the future, whether we're mortgaging the future by borrowing heavily today to finance some of our capital projects and
any borrowing is neither good nor bad. As a banker, I cannot tell you borrowing is bad. No. But
as a Nigerian, would you say that?
But as a Nigerian, I will tell you our borrowing is not good because borrowing, if you borrow money for a particular purpose and you go and do that purpose, it will benefit the economy and benefit the people. So in that context, borrowing is good. I will give you an example. If you go and borrow $2 billion to come and construct a railway line from Abuja to Yola, for instance, and people, every trip of railway can take 1,000 or 2,000 people. You don't need more than 2 trips to take everybody. If it is secure and comfortable, nobody will spend 10,000, 50,000 naira to fly from Yola to Abuja. Because with train, you can go in 3 hours.
Right.
And then it is comfortable and secure. Look at the massive reduction in driving between Abuja and Kaduna. Everybody, even the big people, the senators, the members of the House of Reps, ministers, go to Kaduna from Abuja by train. So if you can borrow to do a project that will be beneficial to the economy and make sure that money is not stolen and make sure that that contract is executed fully and completed and managed well after that to generate employment, generate revenue for government, like tax revenue, and also generate wealth to people, then that borrowing is good. But if you just go and borrow and come and then give contract and turn around and steal the money, it is not good.
We've seen governments, state governments most especially, borrow to pay salaries. Where do you stand on that?
That is terribly bad. Terribly bad. How can you borrow to pay salary? That salary, that money you use to pay the salary, that money is not going to generate employment. That money is not going to generate tax revenue for government. That money is not going to generate wealth for these people. It is a waste. Government, state government must find a way of generating enough revenue to pay salary. You should not go and borrow money to come and pay salary. You must generate your own revenue, and you have abundant ways of generating revenue. I will give you one example. If you go to the cattle market in Ganye local government, that market operates twice a week. And statistics shows that about 7,500 cows are brought into that market every week from Cameroon. People will come and buy. Take it to Lagos, Ibadan, Abakaliki, Enugu, Port Harcourt, Kano, Kaduna, Sokoto, Yola, and so on. But the question is, these 7,500 cows that are sold in Ganye cattle market every week, how much revenue does Adamawa State government earn from it? To me, if you leave me, it may be minimal. At least, you can earn 1,000 naira per cow for bringing it to that market. The Adamawa State government can generate 1,000 naira per cow.
The state government will argue that it has significantly increased its IGR from all of these
that does not
sources.
Extinguish my argument that you can maximize it. You can increase it. That is why they had to increase it, because there was a need to increase it. The need for government to have a lot of money to execute projects for the betterment of the people can never be limited. It's limitless. So if you charge 1,000 naira per cattle, 7,500 cattle, that's 7.5 million naira every week. If you do that time is 52 weeks, you can imagine from Ganya cattle market alone, you are going to generate billions of naira in revenue, or millions, hundreds of millions of naira in revenue. That one alone can take care of primary schools in Ganya local government, or even including Tongo. It can take care of the general hospital in Ganya. It can take care of maintaining the state roads within the state. But it's not done. Conversely, I conducted a research for a company that wanted to establish an abattoir in Nigeria. I'm a financial consultant. I discovered that every day in Lagos State, 12,000 animals are slaughtered in the abattoirs in Lagos State every day, between cow, ram, sheep, and pig. 12,000. For every of these animals, Lagos State government charges 1,000 naira per day for every animal slaughtered in the abattoirs. And they have people, government officials, revenue officials who are sitting down there making sure they collect these revenues. So Lagos State government that is not a cattle producing state, Lagos State government that does not have land for rearing cattle or ranches, is generating 12 million naira revenue from animals that are brought to be slaughtered in Lagos alone per day. 12 million naira per day. If you multiply that by 365 days, that gives you the amount of money Lagos State government generates a revenue from abattoirs only. So the question is, what is our state governors doing in the north? What are our state governments doing in the north to develop such areas that they can generate revenue, to be able to increase their internal generated revenue and be self-sufficient of federal allocation? Let federal allocation be
an alternative source,
a top-up of what they are getting. And how many cattle markets do we have here?
Do you see that happening? Have you seen any sort of body language that indicates that state governments are trying to look for alternatives?
They are not serious. They are lazy. They are lazy. They don't want to do this. They don't have time for this. What they have time for is every month to go to Abuja, collect their allocation to come and sit down and share it. Need to me, sometimes I even live, I said, these people are not even ambitious. If I were them, in addition, I will take this money from Abuja, come and develop other alternative sources of revenue in the state to be able to generate more revenue to do more things for my people. Look at Lagos. You can, if you go to Lagos now and stay for 1 week, the chances are that tax officers will come and meet you and say, we know you are around. What is your TIN number? Tax identification number. Where are you paying your taxes? What are you doing in Lagos? So at the end of the day, you must pay tax. No child goes to school in Lagos if his father or mother does not pay tax. No hospital will attend to you in Lagos if you don't pay tax. Everything is tax-based. You have to pay tax. So many people in this town, myself for instance, my house, if you value my house, where I live in Yola, it cannot be less than 1 billion naira. I have 3 houses in one compound. It cannot be less than 1 billion naira. How much is Adamawa State government asking me to pay in property tax to it? For giving me the land to build that house, those houses to stay inside. I'm staying free. The only thing I pay is ground rent and tenement rent. I pay tenement rent to the local government, ground rent to the state government. And how much is ground rent?
So clearly there are
so many opportunities government can generate revenue, create revenue sources.
People would argue that, I mean, looking at the current situation, the government, especially here in Adamawa State, cannot dig deeper into people's pockets because of the hardship. If the people see that you are adding value to their lives, they will pay. They will pay. I just gave you an example. If my house is worth 100 million naira, why can't I pay Adamawa State government every year 100,000 naira? Are they asking you to pay you?
They are not. Nobody has ever come to even enforce ground rent collection. It is voluntary that I always pay. Nobody enforces it. So if you can come and build a house with 100 million naira, you should be prepared to pay Adamawa State government 100,000 or 50,000 naira every year as property tax. By the time you collect all that, and if your house is only 2 million naira, you should be prepared to pay 10,000 naira or 5,000 to Adamawa State government, because the land belongs to the government. The land is not your own.
The building is yours.
But the building is yours, but the land, and there is a law that says that whatever is affixed to the land belongs to the land. Whatever the quid plantator solo said, it is a legal maxim. Whatever is affixed to the land belongs to the land. So if you build a property on a land, that house belongs to government. That is why government is charging you ground rent and tenement rent. Because you cannot build house in the air. You only build it on the land, and the land belongs to government. So government has opportunity to charge, to create so many sources of revenue that they can generate revenue and collect and dispense that in the execution of projects for the betterment of the people.
All right, let's talk politics. Ahead of the 2019 election, so much has happened, so much will happen. In fact, the anticipation is that we hope that it will be violence-free ahead of the 2019 election. What concerns you the most about the upcoming general election in 2019?
Well, what concerns me most is not all about elections will hold. Even when Boko Haram was this thing in Borno State, election held. The last election, Madagali, Mubi North, Mubi South, Michigan local government people voted here in the Federal University of Technology here. In Borno, they all voted in the IDP camps. In the IDP camps. So voting will take place because you cannot extend the tenure of government. It's constitutional. But it would have been desirable if government makes it sufficiently secure for people to go back to where they have registered to go and vote. So I'm confident voting will take place. However, many people may be disenfranchised because of this crisis that is going on all over the place. If you have registered in Jos, now you are working in Yola and you are desirous of casting your vote, will you go to Jos if there is fighting to go and vote? But those who are in Jos may vote. So what worries me most about the 2019 election is simply political. Political in the sense that up to now, our people have not realized that the essence of voting somebody to power is not to go there and take your own share. The essence is let him go and serve you. But at the rate we are going, there are some people who are saying in this country that whether or not President Buhari delivers, they will stick with him. Whether or not their governor delivers, they will stick with him. Whether or not the alternative candidate has better programs, they will not vote for him. Either because they are not from the same place, or they don't share the same religion, or they don't speak the same language. This is what the problem is.
What about the narrative? What about the rhetoric, the poisonous atmosphere, the hate speeches and all of that? Doesn't that concern you? And what about the campaigns? What would you like the agenda to be about?
That is what I'm telling you now. The hate speech, all these hate speeches emanate from the fact that people will say, I will vote for somebody because he's from my religion, or he speaks my language, or he's from my place. That is why we're having all these hate speeches. And then the election is not going to be prosecuted based on agenda of contestants, but based on their either geography, where they come from, or their ethnicity, or their beliefs. So many people in this country will say we are going to return Buhari because he's a Muslim like me. It's wrong. So many people are saying, I will vote for a social candidate because he's a Christian like me. It is wrong. Let every candidate tell you what is he going to do for you. And then assess the candidate in terms of his capacity to deliver. His capacity to deliver. What are his credentials? This man, if I vote for him, can he come and solve my own problems? If he solve my own problems, I don't have any problem. If my own statesman, my own tribesman, my own religious man will not solve my problem, why should I vote for him? This is what I want people to realize and understand. If you go and vote for somebody who goes to the same church with you, will he buy rice and bring to your house? If you go and vote for somebody who is Allah like you, or a Lariga like you, or a Muslim like you, will he give you fertilizer free to go and put in your farm, to grow food to feed your family? No. So it is this kind of division that politicians use to perpetuate domination of the people.
Yeah, but do you see identity politics playing little role in the 2019 election?
It will play a major role. Identity politics, it will play a major role next year's election. Because already some people are saying, we see in the social media speeches of pastors preaching in this thing, saying that every Christian who does not collect his voter's card to come and vote out Buhari should not come to the church. That is wrong. Why are you attaching Christianity to it? What special favor has Buhari done to Muslims? Buhari has not. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Fulani man like him. What has Buhari done for me that will make me to say I must vote for him to come back? That I must vote for him irrespective of his dismal performance if he has not performed. So I should assess President Buhari based on his performance. If he has performed very well, vote for him.
All right.
If he has not performed very well, vote him out.
In a minute, your thoughts on the age reduction bill. A lot of people think that is the game changer that the political space needed to add new blood.
Yeah, it may be a good idea, but then what is the capacity of the young generation to participate in election?
They seem enthusiastic and ready to
but
take
he doesn't
over.
have capacity. He doesn't have capacity. He doesn't have money to buy vehicles and brand them to be moving around singing. He doesn't have money to give to voters. He doesn't have money to give to political party leaders, to delegates to vote for him. So to me, it's all.
But it is a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction. But so this reform should not be only saying a 30-year-old person can run for House of Reps. Yes, but how do you give him capacity to run for House of Reps? If you say, okay, his ideas, does he have media? How many politicians can come here for you in Gotel to interview him, to spread his own ideas, to be able to catch the attention of voters to vote for him? If he comes here, you give him a bill. He may not pay. He will go around. He will go away. The terrible contestant, the bad contestant who has money will come here and get all the airtime. So the structure is not favorable.
There's still a lot to be done with the support system.
There's still a lot to be done to reform the system. There's a lot that needs to be done to reform the system, to liberalize it and make everybody have capacity or ability to come and participate.
And finally,
the system as it is today is of exclusion, is not of inclusion.
Okay. And a yes or no response would do for this one. Are you optimistic about the future waiting for Nigerians?
I am very, very optimistic. These people who are not doing things right, one day they will be forced out. They are either forced out by peaceful ballot, ballot, or they will be forced out by way of revolution. I believe that if things continue the way they are, this country will ultimately break down, and the people who are in charge will be forced out. And younger generation of Nigerians, patriotic generation of Nigerians will come up and take over, and Nigeria will continue. I'm very confident Nigeria will never break away. All right, let's hope for the best case scenario and not the worst case scenario. Well, Adamu, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. I'm very happy for having me. Thank you very much for coming. All right. Well, that's our show for today. Feel free to join us tomorrow. We'll be back live and exclusive only on TV Gotel. From myself, Abdullah Ahmed, and the rest of the team, thank you very much for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye for now.